This is getting very ugly for Donald Trump's prosecutor in Virginia, Lindsay Halligan. And good. She brought this felony indictment against James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. She brought it before a grand jury when no one else would be by her side. She never had experience before as a federal prosecutor. And it seems that she wasn't even appointed to be the federal prosecutor under the appointment clause of the Constitution. Her very presence in the grand jury room seemed to be a walking, talking violation. Now, a federal judge who has been tasked with determining whether or not Lindsay Halligan was validly even made a federal prosecutor under the appointment clause has issued an order that if you're Lindsay Halligan, will be keeping you up at night. So it is Judge Cameron McGowan Curry was referred this matter from the Comey case and from the New York Attorney General Letitia James criminal case. The matters were consolidated and sent to this judge, a separate judge than the distinct criminal judges handling those separate cases. Now, the judge assigned to decide whether Comey and Tish James' case should be dismissed because Lindsay Halligan's appointment has ordered the DOJ to submit all evidence of Halligan's participation in the grand jury proceedings in both cases. Now, Ed Whelan asks a question that is very interesting and I think goes to the bigger, broader trouble that Halligan is in as well. Ed Whelan asks, why isn't it enough for the judge to simply know that Lindsay Halligan alone signed the indictment? Wouldn't we just need essentially what's called a request for admission? Admit that you were the only federal prosecutor who signed the indictment and who was on this case. Lindsay Halligan admits it. Then it just becomes a legal analysis if her pretending essentially to be a federal prosecutor violates the appointment clause, because in the Eastern District of Virginia, they already had an interim federal prosecutor, the top United States attorney there, and you only get one shot at someone being an interim on that basis. Then the federal judges basically get to determine in the next round if the interim is not confirmed by the Senate. And here they just moved Lindsay Halligan in unlawfully. So why wouldn't it be enough to just know that? Well, what I think is going on is the judge has kind of moved beyond that finding already. I think the judge realizes Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed. But while this judge retains jurisdiction, I think the judge wants to read what went down in the grand jury room. And also send me the documents, send me the communications, you know, those signal messages that are believed to exist between Halligan and potentially Donald Trump and Bondi and Halligan. We want to know everything about your involvement. And I think if you see what's going on in the Abrego Garcia case in the Middle District of Tennessee, where in that case there was a finding of vindictive prosecution, a threshold finding such that discovery would be ordered against Trump's Department of Justice, like the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and others. In the Abrego case, all of those top DOJ officials, they've been really dragging their feet, not turning over the discovery, not producing, violating the court orders. So it's taken a lot of time and motion to compels for Abrego's lawyer to get at that data. What types of information does Todd Blanche have? The emails, the text messages. And in that case, the federal judge in the Middle District of Tennessee, just in the past day or two, ordered Todd Blanche produce all that stuff in camera to the judge, in camera meaning just the judge will get to read that and take a look at it and then decide what should be turned over, if anything. But it's taken a long time to get there. So what I think is happening here with this federal judge, Cameron McGowan Curry, is the judge is moving quick. I want all these documents. The hearing's coming up very soon, next week or two, about whether Halligan should be removed. And I think this judge wants to get the judge's hands on all of this document, what really went down. And the judge said, Give that to me in camera, meaning just the judge. I want to take a look. I want to review it all, turn it over immediately. And the judge is moving quick. So if you look at the order, it says defendant James Comey has filed a motion to dismiss, alleging that the indictment resulted from a violation of the appointment clause and 28 U.S.C. 546, which authorizes the appointment of an interim United States attorney. He contends the individual who signed and procured the indictment was invalidly appointed to the position of interim United States attorney. The undersigned has been appointed to hear this motion and finds it's necessary to determine the extent of the indictment signer's involvement in the grand jury proceedings. Accordingly, the government is directed to submit no later than Monday, November 3rd, for in-camera review all documents relating to the indictment signer's participation in the grand jury proceedings, along with complete grand jury transcripts. In-camera review is appropriate given the secrecy requirements applicable to grand jury proceedings. The above document shall be delivered to the judge, and that order is also going to apply to the New York Attorney General Letitia James motion as well. And this also comes at the same time that a group called American Oversight has filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, to get Lindsay Halligan's text messages, signal messages. We know Halligan chats with Ann Bauer, who's been on our network, the great law reporter, when Halligan was basically revealing information about the grand jury to Bauer, and then a few days later said, off the record. And Bauer's like, nah, sorry, this is what you've told me. It's not off the record at all. So I think that information as well could come under the purview of the judge's order outside of the American Oversight FOIA request as well. Give me all information about what took place in the grand jury. Harry, you and I have been predicting this a long time. Let's bring in Harry Litman of the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. We've been saying this is where it's headed. You don't want to be Lindsay Halligan if you care about your bar license right now. And if you're her, you've got to be sweating this, because the writing's on the wall, I think, where this is going as it relates to her. And in many ways, it's slow torture.
That's a good way to put it. I'm thinking of this as a sort of Hitchcock nightmare, like you're, Cary Grant thrown into the grand jury, but he's never even been there and he doesn't know what to wear, much less what to say. And every kind of instance we've had of her on the record, she's blundered in some way, even in as simple a custom as how you present yourself to the court. So think about it. Anyone who's been in the DOJ, well, I'll just tell you, you train for like a couple of years before you would go into the grand jury, at which point you would have a older assistant at your shoulder and you would have prepared, really fastidiously. She has been there 2 days, doesn't know the first thing about prosecuting, isn't qualified to be hired as a legal intern. And it's not only a super high profile case, but one in which her mission, and, it's like to go to another movie, a James Bond thing where if she fails, this is the price of failure, Mr. Bond. She's got to come back with the scalp of Jim Comey. So imagine, she doesn't know anything at all. She doesn't know what to do in the grand jury room. Nobody will go in with her in the office. And that extends to the later arraignment, because everybody thinks the prosecution stinks. And she goes in on her own, and knowing she's got to come out with an indictment one way or another. So I don't know if it's grand jury stuff. He's reviewing it in camera. You've talked about, other motions, but we shouldn't see it. But these things sometimes have a way of coming out. But anyway, Ed Whalen makes an interesting point, because it's the legal infirmity that Comey is charging, and James, and you wouldn't think it would depend on just what happened in the grand jury room, but nevertheless, the judge has said otherwise, and I think at a minimum, it's going to be such an embarrassment for her. Now, one thing he may have in mind, the judge, is front-loading any discovery disputes. So there are sort of two things, two categories, I would say here, Ben. One is the grand jury transcripts, anything she did to sort of prepare her, but if anything. So that's one. And I don't see how they resist turning that over, and we'll see what happens to it. They can say, "Oh, grand jury secrecy," but it's going to a judge in camera. Then the other is all the sort of signal chat, actual back and forth and communications. That's going to be just incendiary, because that's where you're going to have Trump and Bondi and Blanche saying, "We got to indict him. You indict him tomorrow." That stuff will be very good evidence for his other motion of selective prosecution, and how they fasten on, "I know, we'll put Lindsay in there," even though she has zero experience, and what else they went through. That's going to tell a whole story. That evidence, however, you're going to see the administration try to stonewall on some kinds of claim of executive privilege or the like. We know that that's a privilege that gives ground if there's a reason you need the evidence, and that the judge has asked for. It seems pretty strong, but I bet you see them try to resist at least that part going forward. But back to sort of Ed's point, I think the judge is going to be possessed. It's almost a kind of leverage thing. He'll have stuff that, is just deeply embarrassing, I think, to the Department of Justice and Lindsay Halligan, and may at some point form the basis of a bar complaint, as you mentioned. And, we're just, as we've seen in the Abrego case just now, in order to keep certain evidence from coming out, you and I predicted this as well. They're going to probably move to dismiss after all that tough talk in Abrego. And same point here. If the judge insists on the sort of signal chat stuff and they can't get out of it, we'll see what they do. Two quick points to just add. One is, remember, Comey versus James. You can imagine. Now, and the reason the judge is hearing this, by the way, is because Nachmanoff is from the same district as the U.S. attorney. It would just be too much of a conflict. Those people are in front of him every day. So this is from another district, but he's going to be, hearing, the stuff about that she's done in the grand jury, and he will be in a position to, if he holds that she's unlawfully appointed, Comey, as opposed to James, it seems to me, goes free and that's the end of the case, because the statute of limitations has run in his case. That's why they kicked Halligan in the rear to get her to go to the grand jury right away. And a final point I wanted to make, give me 8 seconds to try to retrieve it. This sometimes happens in front of a court. You say, "Yes, Your Honor, Your Honor." But it has to do. I'll think about it if you come back to me. Well,
here's my question for you, Harry. There, the grand jury testimony. At what point does, and this as a federal prosecutor, when does Comey and Letitia James get to review it? Have they got it in the first batch of discovery? Do they have it now? And do they know is it obviously subject to a protective order, but have they seen it?
Yeah, great question. The answer is no. They would see it if and when so somebody testified in there. She asked the questions, and she had some agent up who just sort of went through things. If that agent testifies at the trial, that's when you'll hear it. And here's an interesting wrinkle, by the way. There was a grand jury in the James case in Norfolk. They heard from the great niece who lives in that house, they say, that James acquired unlawfully, who testified, I never paid rent, exactly as James is saying. Then when Lindsay Halligan indicts her, they go to another grand jury over in Alexandria, and that grand jury never hears, we think, about the great niece's testimony. So, that's going to be a whole another brouhaha.
So does it happen, Harry, in real time? I mean, so the case goes to trial. Comey and Letitia James, they don't see the grand jury testimony. The witness gets called, and then does the discovery obligation attach right the day before the witness.
The second before. It's weird, but of course, and this DOJ plays it probably as nasty as they can. But all it says, this is the Jenks Act, is if someone's testifying, you must give the discovery and grand jury stuff over before they do. You can even put them on the stand if you're playing it really tough. You can sort of negotiate over this, but and have a court come in, but it technically abides by their responsibilities under the rules to put that witness on and then say your questions to the defense, and then and only then give up the transcript of the grand jury. But I think we could probably see them try to structure this case without having those people testify at all. And anyway, I remembered my other thing, Ben. I think it is kind of interesting. You have Halligan saying, as to the James case, I never told Bondi and Blanche that I was doing this. I just kind of did it on my own. It's completely mind-bending, and there must be more of a story to that. But that's part of what he has ordered up. So either we get some stuff that shows that to be, a total fib, where she says, I'm doing this now, or we get it explained, and something is very funky about it. So that's another thing that I think the discovery that the judge has ordered up will reveal. Again, that's the signal chat stuff where we can expect the DOJ to fight.
I just want people to think about this. She goes and gets this indictment, and it was probably a massive celebratory day for her and her career. She showed up, Trump ordered it, and I bet you she was nervous. She hadn't been in front of a grand jury before. She gets a call from Donald, her cult leader, her Fuhrer. You did it. I always knew you can do it. And she's celebrating with her family. I did it. Oh my God. I was so nervous. I was so worried.
I'm so glad it's over. Now we'll never have to worry.
and then you can tell she's getting nervous by the fact that she's direct messaging reporters. This is living in her head as as the reality starts to set in on what she did. And I'm just letting you know, she's haunted at nights. If there's any saving grace in all of this, she is tortured at the evening. She wakes up panicking. We know in the courts, she fidgets left and right, and she's nervous being there. And this is the rest of her foreseeable future now, having to deal with what she did against two very powerful people who will be throwing everything out it to make sure that the case not only gets dismissed, but they'll have Comey, Letitia James, will not end until she loses her bar license and that her career is over. This will be their lifelong mission. And these are not people that you piss off like this. And when an order hits and that goes on the ECF, I'm telling you, the level of pain, physical, that it probably inflicts in her is like, oh my God, what do I do now? What do I do now?
Just a quick point to add to that, Ben. Maybe Comey and James have it out for her, but it doesn't matter. There are, hundreds of thousands, but she's already been referred to the bar, and there'll be plenty of people to push this point. Now, do you remember from last time around in Mar-a-Lago? What about the household name, Jenna Ellis? I don't think so. Eastman, these are people who, it's just, she'll be the next illustration of everything Trump touches dies.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers here. But more importantly, subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel, Talking Feds. Let's get them 1 million subscribers. So just search on YouTube, Talking Feds. And then while you're motivated, subscribe to Talking Feds Substack and Talking Feds podcast. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.